A good way to make yourself feel old is with a property that had its first flush of popularity significantly after your childhood had had its revival 20 years later. And that revival has now gone to 5 years before this video. Christ, I feel old. And you know what? The baby that played the original son in the Teletubbies now has children. I feel like that fella in The Last Crusade, I swear. So yes, the incomprehensible for all but the most stoned adults show, and babies of course, from the late 90s had a PlayStation game along with a lot of other toddler-pleasing merch. But before we warm up the grey box of tricks, no doubt by flipping it over onto its lid as the bugger's laser refuses to work anymore, let's look at the all too recent history of that felt-covered biotechno Cronenbergian nightmare troupe of simpleton ogres, the Teletubbies. The year is 1997. The hunger of toddlers and babies to be entertained by the television can no longer be sated by just Fireman Sam, Postman Pat, Thomas the Tank Engine or Tots TV. Again, and it's important to remember this to make you feel old, is that babies born in 1997, by the way, were people like Maisie Williams, Marcus Rashford and Kylie Jenner. I am so old. Well, creators Anne Wood and Andrew Davenport decided they were going to sate that hunger for entertainment, and they pitched an idea about some astronaut-looking characters on a moon-like landscape, which would be brightened up and covered in colourful weather, fauna and fabrics. After some development, the Teletubbies was born and placed on the CBBC morning slot on BBC Two, because remember, CBBC used to be a segment rather than its own channel. There was initially quite a large backlash against the furry invaders when it nicked the Playdays spot, as adults just didn't get it. Teletubbies was very unconventional at the time. It was wordless, it was big on colours, it was big on repetition. There were no human hosts, just these four childlike goofs of varying heights, all bumbling about, hugging and falling over. Sort of like the late stages of a middle-aged hen do, essentially only with less endless dirty jokes and inflatable winkles going about. The only human interaction happens when the quartet gather on the mound near the wind turbine, at which point the eponymous tellies on the Tubbies will kick in and footage of children existing and over-gurning for the camera will play for 2 minutes. Given that it's footage of children and the Teletubby displaying this footage on its stomach starts convulsing in either pleasure or pain, well, I don't know, I just find it a little bit uncomfortable to watch. Another unsettling presence is that of the farting periscope, which acts as a sort of a prison warden, telling them when they can leave their enclosure and when they have to go to bed. The whole thing is an absolute Eldritchian nightmare when you start to think about it, or in my case overthink about it, as I'm known to do. But to those who still defecate where they sit and drink direct from a tit, it's gripping stuff. It was a absolute mega hit, despite parents initially not getting it. You see, their children did. It was a hit not just in the UK but worldwide. It was shown in 120 countries. There were in-depth debates about the sexuality of Tinky Winky by academics and TV show hosts just because he walked around with a handbag. Students adopted it because they did that really annoying, "Oh, they must have been on drugs when they made this," lol thing that every generation seems to do in that really annoying manner with children's shows. And they shifted an absolute po-load of merch. There was a UK #1 single. Yeah, I know. And Teletubbies is still the most lucrative show the BBC has ever made in terms of its merchandise. Yes, even more than that fella in the TARDIS. It is estimated that an incredible £1 billion has been made from merch revenue by the year 2020 on this Teletubbies property. Teletubbies has won BAFTAs and other awards. It has had a remake series that ran from 2015 to 2018. It was unquestionably an edutainment monolith for the under 5s. They had a uniqueness about them in the 1990s. It is a uniqueness that has been copied quite a lot since, with In the Night Garden probably being the most successful of the shows that aped its style. So being that successful, it did of course have several computer games, including this one on the most beloved console of the day, the PlayStation 1. Play with the Teletubbies was released on the PC first in 1998, and then it made the move across the PS1 in 1999, courtesy of BBC Multimedia in the PAL regions and Knowledge Adventure in the North American territories. It was developed by Asylum, who unsurprisingly do not have their name featured on the front of the box of this game, firmly aimed at very young children who won't know what an Asylum is and probably shouldn't yet. You see, the market for the PS1 was altering at this point. In its first couple of years, the console was aimed at a young adult market, the first console to be aimed at that market rather than adolescent males. But by 1999, excitement for the next generation was building. The Dreamcast had come out in 1999 and the PS2, well, that wasn't far down the pipeline. So young, late Generation X adults would soon be passing on the old grey slab to the millennial generation, the son, the daughter, the younger sibling, and so a lot more games aimed at a younger market started to appear on Sony's machine. Teletubbies was at the extreme furthest end of that market, that being the toddler. The game starts with the 4 characters on the hill, and a button press will select which of the pudgy protagonists you will play as. Once the character is selected, you can explore the confines of the garden left to right, or indeed right to left. And not to worry, you can't walk off into the wilderness and into the maw of whatever preys on the gang in Tubbyland. The screen will simply loop if you walk more than 3 or 4 screens over. Several objects will flash along the playfield, which when approached will take your tubby into a particular activity, which can be repeated as many times as you see fit once you've played it. Walking into the foreground will see you enter the house, which is covered in technology that likely does absolutely nothing, and you can enter an encounter with Nunu the Hoover, who will swallow the tubby tustard that you've ejaculated all over the place after getting a little bit too excited. Walk into the background from the outside grassy compound though, and you'll start a character unique video sequence featuring children who now have mortgages and some grey hairs probably, engaging in all sorts of children-based tomfoolery. You can swap characters between activities. Not a great deal is massively different if you do, barring the aforementioned clips and the occasional object interaction. How do you finish Teletubbies? Well, you simply press start, then select, and then the Tubbies are commanded to turn it in for the night by that farting periscope. And so, what does this actually play like? Well, it doesn't. Not really. It has the hint of gameplay, but it's more of a sprinkling. You really just sort of walk about, accessing the mini activities. You press a few buttons to interact with them, and then you move on to the next one. Or repeat it again when the Tubby says, again. There's not many of these. You can see them all in 30 minutes. And they're all as short as most of the people who've played this when it came out. But it's important to realise why. It reminds me a lot of the Ormond Cheap game on the Spectrum. The interaction is barely there because it's not aimed at you or me. It's aimed at the very, very young. You're not going to be pulling off a spinning pile driver on old Dipsy with Laa Laa here. It's basically a more sophisticated version of a DVD menu, and that's exactly what it needs to be. It was extensively playtested by little folk in nappies, and they liked it, and that's the end result. You can't argue with that. As such, it fulfills what it set out to do. Kids of that age will watch movies multiple times. It doesn't even matter that there's not many activities. It exists as its own thing, not a video game but a media package for the sort of folk who bang their heads on the corners of tables. Now, to an adult, it's complete drivel and a rip-off, but I can assure you I have spent 0% of today in a baby bouncer or chewing a plastic ring. That's tomorrow. To rate it as a game is to miss the point. And miss the point the official PlayStation magazine truly did indeed do. They probably didn't get the concept when they gave it a 1 out of 10 in March 2000 in the UK edition of their magazine. And yes, this is from Wikipedia, as I couldn't find it on the Internet Archive. Internet Archive, you let me down for once, and I'm very disappointed. To summarise then, if you're an adult, there is literally nothing for you here unless you like doing ironic YouTube reviews. Whereas if you're a late 90s toddler, you'll probably love it. So, are you? Hi, how are you a toddler from the late 90s in 2023? You okay? Good. But yeah, if you're an adult and you really want to try a edutainment game meant for children, try Shoe People on the Spectrum, Benji on the Commodore 64, or one of the Carmen Sandiego games on the 8 or 16 bits. They'll teach you about geography. That'd be good, wouldn't it? Or don't. Uh-oh. Next up, well, how about we stick to the same era of television, but go for a crap American early teens entertainment show instead, and have a look at Animorphs. I used to be a wolf, but I'm all right now. Did I hold that too long? Probably. What a classic joke. Like, subscribe, and K, thanks, bye.